Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is Unreleased, a mini-series about films that are unreleased, underavailable, and under a tax cut. And today, we're going to be discussing the long-awaited film, the alternate version of Justice League, known as Zack Snyder's Justice League, that came about after years of fans wanting to hashtag release the Snyder Cut after that film was unceremoniously taken away from Zack Snyder and finished by Joss Whedon. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and joining me to talk about the film is a good friend, a pop culture expert, and the host of the Sick Burn podcast, Thomas Craig. How's it going, Thomas?
Good on, Derek. Yeah, can't wait to dive into this one. So happy you dragged me through 4 hours of this for an episode. But yeah, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on it because, I'm sure you're gonna have some positives out of it, and I found some too. But wow, that beginning was a slog.
This is an interesting beast, and I'm very excited to dice it up here with you. And you know your comic book lore. I saw Supergirl with you. You were chatting about it afterwards. You know your shit. So it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. Before we dive too much into this, as you put it, 4-hour film, this real epic, I guess you would call it. What did you want to let the people know about yourself?
Yeah, plane crash survivor, burn survivor, turned pop culture. Expert sounds way too grand. I'm just an enthusiast. But that got me out of my shell, helped me recover. And here we are, we're going to cons together, talking movies, talking shows. I like all things pop culture. I've always been a comic book fan. We did the X-Men episode. That's kind of what got me into this whole world. But now for me, it's all just about hopefully helping people get through their hard moments. And I think one amazing way to do it is by TV and film. And I again, this one is interesting though, because I don't think it made me feel better. I think it made me feel a little worse.
Interesting.
About my life.
Yeah, well, we might be not exactly aligned on this. I'm not. I'll say this at the top. I'm not one of those guys who's like, I like Zack Snyder. I like some of his films. I think he's made some really good films. I think he's also made a couple not very good films.
Yeah.
We've covered him here before on the podcast back in the day. Talked about Sucker Punch. So I'm not one of those hashtag release the Snyder Cut guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also somebody who's like, I'm all for seeing the artistic vision of someone seen through. And of course, another miniseries that he did was, the director's cuts miniseries, extended editions. Whereas I think this fits a little bit better here and differs from that one is the quote unquote Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League, was a film that was unreleased because the film was shot and finished. It was not. The production was not done, but it was basically all of the pre-production and production was done. None of the post-production was done before that film was taken away from him, and the accounts vary about how much of it was reshot, but at least half of it seems to be reshot by Joss Whedon. It's interesting, you talked about mental health. Part of the reason that there's accounts differ whether he was fired or if he just stepped away, but it was after the death of Zack Snyder's daughter. And there was obviously some negative aspects for people coming and asking for this film, but some of the positive stuff that came out of it was there was a lot of money that the people trying to get this film in its intended vision raised a lot of money for suicide prevention, mental health issues, which was
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was some really cool stuff around that because that's unfortunately what happened with Zack Snyder's daughter, and he took some time away, some personal time after that. Right. So there was some genuine good. I think that a lot of the loudest, angriest voices got amplified surrounding this, the release of this. Mm-hmm. But there was also a lot of people who genuinely wanted to see a good movie and people who were doing some genuine good in the world. I think it, as you said, movies can help people out. And I think that, Zack Snyder getting to finally release this was a big deal for him. So, I think it was a big step. But to talk about the film itself.
Well, I want to just interject a little bit. I'm not a Zack Snyder hater either, though. I think The Watchmen is probably one of the greatest comic book movies that's ever been made. I truly love it. I think Zack Snyder for me is best when he's adapting something and not creating something from whole cloth. I think anytime he has a little bit too much leeway to write something, or I do not think maybe he's a good writer. I love his visual styles. I mean, 300 is incredible as well, but it's just anytime he's able to just kind of put too much of his thoughts into it, I feel like the story is always a little convoluted or wacky, or it never gels together. I was so excited for Sucker Punch. There's so many parts of Sucker Punch I just think are so freaking cool, but it just never came together in this perfect way. And there's parts I kind of even like that movie, but it's still it just kind of misses a little bit on some elements. And I think maybe that's what it is here for me too.
Interesting, yeah, because I will say, Snyder, he does have a story credit, so he did, craft the story on this. But the credited writer is Chris Terrio, who he won an Academy Award for Argo, so he worked on with Snyder on Dawn of Justice and Man of Steel. Yeah, so this thing, it does feel like this is the most Zack Snyder movie. I think I will definitely 100% agree with that, because I think that Snyder he's been accused of being a Randian, which is, I don't think it's accurate. He's never come out and said anything like that. I think someone
would be a Randian,
like a follower of Ayn Rand's philosophies, which is just there are certain people that are better than everyone else, and they deserve to be held up, and us common folks just gotta give them money or whatever the fuck.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Right,
which makes sense on his portrayal of Superman. Then, when you look at how.
Which people think, but he's never said that. He's never come out and said that. Brad Bird, I think, might be more in that category, honestly. But go on.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think it does feel like that in his character portrayal, right? And we're going to get into the movie, but when you look at the way that Aquaman acts, and you look at the way that Bruce Wayne, very much so, but this is the most cocky Bruce Wayne we've ever gotten. And again, I think Ben Affleck was a pretty good choice. There's something about him where it's oh, that's a pretty cool take on Bruce Wayne, and he's big, he's imposing. There's those elements. And then his Superman, there's very much his Superman is sweet. I think Henry Cavill is perfectly cast. I think David Corenswet is still perfectly cast too for these different worlds, but there's something about the way he frames Superman in this world as this messianic figure that just to me just makes me roll my eyes a little bit, and it makes me just feel all right, it's so heavy-handed, but so basically I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is, for me, I feel like it's less of a Randian philosophy and more of, I think Snyder is wearing his influences and his favorite tropes on his sleeve, which are, he loves, I think, mythology and specific and Arthurian lore. Like he is he's talked about many times about one of his favorite films ever being Excalibur. I think that, and I think this is the real core difference, not in just in the movies, but in a lot of the TV show, or like a lot, like going back to the comics, is that the Marvel characters feel like real people. They feel like us, like
Right.
people relate to Spider-Man, whereas the DC characters are these larger than life mythical figures, and it's
They're
not just
gods.
Snyder, right? Exactly. They're literal gods in some cases.
Mhm.
And there's a flashback scene in this, which is one of my favorite scenes, where you get to see the gods. You see Zeus and Ares fighting against and
Yeah.
that scene is so cool because you get Green Lanterns and Atlanteans and like
Hey,
this
that
old
is cool.
king,
I do
right?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he is very much operating, and it's something that George Miller, who almost did a Justice League movie way back in the day, has also touched on, is like the superheroes are kind of our new modern mythology. So I
Mhm.
think that it makes sense that Snyder wanted to portray these characters as these mythical, larger than life figures. But the thing that I think is lost on a lot of people is that these mythical figures, the Greek gods, King Arthur, they are very, very powerful, very like influential, very just all assuming people, but they are also deeply, deeply flawed. Like Zeus,
Mhm.
incredibly flawed
Oh yeah.
character. King Arthur is really flawed. Like his whole thing with him, Lancelot, and Guinevere in that like love triangle. I'm reading Once and Future King right now. Very fascinating. He's like both this great king, but like
Mhm.
has all these fucked up interpersonal relationships. And I think
Yeah.
you see that really translate into this. And I think Snyder was like, this is my chance to make my mythology, my 4-hour epic film. And
Mm.
it didn't, I agree, it did not need to be that long because this film was reshot a second
Mhm.
time when they were like redoing extra footage for this, because there was a Snyder cut, and then they were like, well, let's put some more stuff. And I don't know how much of that was original and how much was put in. I know that the Joker shit was put in for some reason. I That's the
Oh,
one that would,
we're gonna get to that. We'll save that
yeah.
for later on.
But I think it has that mythological tone.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I want to hear, because I know I'm more hot on this movie than you. I want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And when you describe it that way, I completely see it that way. My issue though is it just comes across without knowing all those. I didn't know any of that backstory. I haven't seen a million of the Snyder interviews. So without knowing any of that, it just comes across as like, for me, very pretentious, very like he gets accused all the time, I do know this, of using excessive slow-mo. And there's sometimes where people are just walking out of the coffee shop, or the whole thing with Aquaman, like he walks an entire dock, it's all in slow motion, and some of it is cool, but it's just like, all right, we get it. He's walking into the storm, he's drinking. Why is he drinking to get drunk, or he's just that guy? And there's just so many moments where it's like, I get it, and I feel like you're just beating me over the head with it now. And I'm not even one that needs like fast cuts and things. I don't need like constant action even. It just seems like I don't know. I don't know. It just feels like you're full of this moment, and maybe it's I don't know what he's getting out of it. Well, a lot of what you said makes sense now, but I don't know. Just as a first time, and this was my second time watching it. Just watching it now for the second time, you're just like, oh god, this guy. Let's get out of here. Like I get the point,
Right.
And I think that's how it reads to me.
Well, yeah, it makes because I think it is very self serious. He's like I'm making the new mythology, I'm making the new King Arthur lore. I have to take this
Mm,
very serious, and he does lean on the slow motion a bit. He does. There's some things where like I said, I like Snyder, but there's some things where I'm like, I could see how people would interpret them as pretentious. There's a lot of exposition in these movies that feels like it slows it down a little bit. One thing that I think is like people could argue it being pretentious is the aspect ratio in this is for some reason it's 4:3, and I've heard that been like, well, that's the IMAX ratio. I'm like, yeah, but when Denis Villeneuve or Chris Nolan shoots a movie and they shoot it
mhm,
specifically with IMAX cameras for IMAX, they also have it in all the other formats. Like James Cameron has been doing that since the 90s, where he's like, okay, this shot is going to look good both in a theater and it's going to look good on like a TV, a 4 by
Yeah.
3. Whereas this, so it just cuts off the sides, and it's like we're watching. This is coming out not in theaters. This is coming out on your small screen. So
Right,
it's
right.
it's a weird choice. I don't really agree with it, but you know what?
Yeah.
If it makes it feel like this is a big epic movie that should be watched in an IMAX screen,
It does, but
okay.
yeah, and you're so right. I mean, but that's the kind of thing where it's like, you think it's as epic as it is, or like, or is it epic? Right?
Hmm.
And I think that's the thing where it feels like it is trying to be epic rather than it is epic. I mean, there's the moments where I think it was the beginning of the movie where they're all standing around the mother box. It's all the Themyscirians and all the Amazonian women, and they're just standing there. And there's hundreds of them in this dome room, and they all have their swords and spears out, and it makes a little, poof, and they're all like, right, and they're standing there. How long have they been standing there? Do that many of them stand there every single day? And then one of the ladies goes, "We should go get the queen." And then like an hour passes and we're in chapter 2, and then the queen arrives. Like, if that thing hadn't moved in 1,000 years and you have that many people watching it all the time, she's just gonna casually walk up and be like, we should figure out what to do with this thing. And then next thing
I think
like,
it did start to, in its defense, I think it did start to wake up, and that's where like we're gonna put all of our warriors in here.
okay, I hope so. But it just, dude, those moments where, are we supposed to feel urgency about this or are we not? And I guess
Mhm.
that's the question when I'm seeing these moments, and they're cool. These set pieces are awesome. Like, the idea and principle is awesome, but it's weird. Maybe a hot take. That's where I think the theatrical cut of that scene in particular might have been a little bit better, because it got the point across that Steppenwolf is here. Although I will say, I'll give this cut its credit, because I think Steppenwolf looked way cooler in Zack Snyder's cut than it did in he did in the theatrical release. But it got the point across. He's here, he's getting the mother box, and he's a badass, and none of them can stop him. It just felt like that was another scene where it was like, we see how imposing he is. We see how many of them it takes to just try to hot potato this thing away from him, and they can't do anything. I guess, like, I don't know. It just felt like action for action's sake, rather than it showing me anything different about Steppenwolf or about the Amazonians. And it kind of, for me, dragged down the speed, or the urgency of these scenes.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point. I like that you brought up the theatrical cut, because I think it is such an interesting dynamic, because that goes so fast. And part of the reason that movie is cut the way it was, and why Joss Whedon was brought in to get it in quickly and under a budget, was because if it got delayed, Warner Brothers executives wouldn't get like a bonus or something like that. So it was all just like, it had
Oh,
nothing to do with any artistic choices. But it is a lot quicker. There's a lot more drawn out stuff, which I think sometimes, like, maybe you could make the argument that like it's like we don't need to see this whole scene. We understand the point of it. But
right.
at points, I think, for example, when Superman just shows up at the end, it's a lot more impactful and works a lot better in the Snyder cut than it did
Yeah.
in the theatrical cut. He just kind of shows up and beats the shit out of Steppenwolf. And I'm like, well, what the fuck was the point of any of the other Justice League here? Whereas it feels
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
everybody made sense. All the things they were doing leading up to that worked and made sense in this cut. And
Right.
there's so much stuff like that where it's just like, it just going so fast. And I did clown on the exposition a little bit, but I
Mhm.
really had no idea, like, really what the fuck was going on in the theatrical cut, because it just kind of zooms through. It's not
Yeah.
explained well. There's just random subplots that are just like boring and under. Like, Barry Allen there's like one family that randomly lives in this like Chernobyl place, and Barry Allen's like, "I'm gonna save you guys. Put it in the car." I'm like, why is this here?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It was just to try to show him being heroic.
Mhm.
One thing I will give credit to in this cut is the expansion of Cyborg and his backstory.
Yeah.
It's done way better here. There's no question about that. Seeing the relationship with his mom, seeing the relationship with his dad, and like, now that his mom, who he was closer to, is now gone. He's forced to be with his dad, but him and his dad have this strained relationship because the dad is scientist focused on his work. And the son always wanted the dad's attention, but couldn't get it because he was an athlete. And, like that element of it, I think is better. Like it's unquestionable. And it also makes sense why, and the actor's name is escaping me now. But
Ray Fisher.
Ray Fisher, there you go. It makes sense why he was so mad at what was put out in the theatrical cut. And I get that. Like and I remember hearing this interview by Zack Snyder saying like, he was the heart of the movie, and you don't get that at all in the theatrical cut. And basically, and I'll end with this. I think also Ray Fisher was a theater actor. He wasn't a movie actor, and Zack Snyder saw him and was like, I got to put you in a movie. Like, I want you to be my cyborg. And he kind of had to convince him to do it. So the fact that he convinced him to do it, and then he does this role, it gets slashed by the studio. Yeah, I'm sure I would have been pissed too. So it makes sense. Again, I think there's moments there where they still heavily dwell on things that maybe they didn't need to, but I think he's done way better in this cut.
Yeah, Cyborg I think is the really one of the standout things that Zack Snyder's cut really significantly improves. He was largely cut out of that theatrical to the point where he's barely a character, and I think part of that is Cyborg doesn't really have the same name recognition as Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or even Aquaman. Other than like Teen Titans, he's not that well known to a general audience, I would say. And that was like a relatively that's a kid show from like 10 years before this. But he's such an interesting, fascinating character that is gripping with this great power. And like you said, he is really the heart of this thing. He's connected to it both story-wise with the mother box being what created him, and thematically, like he's the one going on this journey. He is kind of the character that really has to grow and change, I think, the most out of anyone. And the fact that he got so cut out is really tragic because Fisher is so good and all the stuff surrounding him is so good. And there's been some accusations that maybe Wheaton was a little bit just to say what other people said, like it was race-related reasons, like that he was cutting him out because he was like a black character, and he wanted to feature the more traditional white heroes a little more. It's really gross and messy, but I think he's so fantastic, and I think not only Cyborg but all of the characters are really well served by this cut, and part of that is the runtime because you are spending a lot more time with it. But part of it is that thing we were talking about with slowing down. And, there's the joke of like the movie literally slows down for slow motion, but it actually does give its characters and its time to breathe. It's like what we were talking about after our Supergirl review, right? How there's the theatrical cut was just dumb action scenes and people talking, and you never really had a beat where you're getting to know Aquaman or Wonder Woman or anything like that. And this one, I was really struck by, there are a lot of those moments where you do feel like these larger-than-life characters. They're, once again, these big, grandiose figures, but they are so flawed and interesting in a lot of ways. And one of my favorite scenes is there's this moment where it's Diana and Arthur, Aquaman and Wonder Woman, they're just talking. And they're just kind of like talking about their people. And they say, there's some saying that they have in both Atlantis and in Themyscira. Right. I can never pronounce it. And it's just like this bond where it's like, oh yeah, our people have been at, our enemies, they've been at war over the course of our history. We have all these differences, but there's this thing that unites us that we would never expect. And that's kind of the core theme of at least Snyder's version of the movie, is like coming together, uniting, which is why I also think it's not Randian, because it's not like, oh, well, it is kind of like we need Superman, right? But it's also like, we need Superman as the last piece of the puzzle. Like, we have all of us here, and we need to get Superman back because he's the strongest of us, and he will help us win. But they lose without Barry Allen going super fast. They lose without Cyborg being able to go into the thing. They need him all there, unlike the Snyder Cut, which is like he just shows up, beats the shit out of him, and then the movie ends.
Yeah, there's a lot more balance. There's a lot more team synergy, I think, in this one. Absolutely. I don't know. Like, I think for me, you're so right about everybody, except for I feel like I don't think I learned anything new in this from Diana. It there's I gotta say I think I like the scene where she saves the schoolgirls, maybe more in the theatrical cut, but I haven't watched that in years either, so it's hard to say. But I don't know. I think just knowing what I know about Gal Gadot or Gadot, however you say it now,
Mhm.
it's just like it's so apparent how bad of an actress she is.
I will say she's not good in this. I think there's a lot of good performances in this. I think there's two that are very bad, and I would say she's one of them. The other one I would say is Ezra Miller. I think everyone
Yeah.
else is fantastic, but
Yeah.
she's just not good.
And like, yeah. And even as Ezra Miller, I might be one of the few people that actually didn't think the Flash movie was that bad.
Mhm.
I think there are elements of like the special effects are horrendous in that movie, but I thought that Ezra did a pretty decent job of conveying two different characters. And I kind of like the twist that one of them became bad, but in this one, he's just like I just didn't like Barry Allen as just like a complete joke. And I know they needed somebody in here to be the comic relief kind of for the team, but it just I don't know, it still just it very much doesn't work. Although I think that they do better things.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by Chat GPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about Chat GPT work? It's the new way to use Chat GPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give Chat GPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
With the Flash in this than they did in the theatrical release too. It's weird because you're kind of making me flop a little bit where I really was just like, man, this is trash. But I am able to notice where this movie actually does some things pretty cool. And one of them is like it gives the Flash a lot more agency. Like in the
Mhm.
theatrical cut, he's just kind of doing things, and everything seems like an accidental fumble into maybe working or not. Where this, there seems a lot more of like making things happen, and I do appreciate that. Although I don't really like how he's just like a complete joke for most of it.
Yeah, like he's the one kind of character that gets to be a little bit comic relief. I'm not a huge fan of that character or that performance in either version. I think it is significantly better in this version because everything is so kind of jokey. The other, I will say though, there are some good comic moments with Aquaman. I think that Jason
Yeah,
Momoa is utilized perfectly in this, and we
I
talked about how
agree.
he's so good as Lobo, but he's also
Mhm.
really fucking good in this, and because
Yeah,
he is still like the serious badass Jason Momoa, but he gets to have fun at the same time. And I think that's striking the right balance with him, where he's when he goes a little bit too jokey, it's like
it's
it's
yeah,
not
it doesn't
best.
always work.
But he
Yeah,
gets he still gets to have a little fun. And I will say, and it's in both versions, but my favorite moment of the whole movie is just Aquaman going, "My man!" It's
best.
fucking it's so goddamn good.
It's like that had to be so ad libbed. Like
Yeah.
that was a straight Momoa line. You know, it's like John Bernthal saying, like, let me tell you something. You know, like he's gonna say it in the Odyssey. It's probably not in the script, but
No,
like
it is.
that's how the
I will
guy
say he did say Bernthal did say they put it in the script because I think it was originally an ad lib and people were like, well, it's like Owen Wilson with Wow. They're like, we got to put this in there now. But
Yeah,
there it is.
exactly.
He did say Nolan put it in the script.
But you see, but this is like that's the actor now transcending the
Mhm.
character rather than the character like
Mhm.
adopting. You know what I mean? That's how synonymous he's. And to your point, I think Jason Momoa in this role is more Khal Drogo than he
Mhm.
is yeah, like Lobo or I'm trying to think of some other roles. I saw the
Whatever
Wrecking Crew
whatever his
scene.
name, yeah, whatever his character's name was in Minecraft, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Like that was too much for me. Granted, it's for kids. Like I'm
Mhm.
fine with that. But I
But
loved
Drogo is
all of
like
this.
humorless, right? Drogo is like too
Yeah.
serious, like, and this is I think it is
Right.
closer to Drogo, but it's the right amount of that humor.
It
It's
is.
just enough.
It is. And he wrote it perfectly for him, just like I think he wrote Bruce Wayne pretty perfect. You
Mhm.
know, he's just enough fly that you're like, oh yeah, this guy, he knows he's rich, he knows he's handsome, but he also knows he's overpowered. And he's like, if I'm not going to put this team together, I don't know who's going to do it. So I got to do it. Like, there's just enough elements here that this really would have been a good overall universe Batman. Like, this Batman could have led a universe of heroes, right? And I think that element of it is pretty cool. It's sad that we never got more of this Bruce Wayne like really developed, and to see what he would have done maybe in more of his solo situations and with more heroes kind of looking up to him. But I really like I really like Ben Affleck. I'm not a Ben Affleck hater though. I realize like the more movies I watch with him, the more I really like him as an actor. He's a very intelligent person. Maybe it's because I've also seen a lot of interviews with him just being himself. But like I liked his performance in this.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. You know, I would have liked to have seen what he would have done in later movies. Obviously, this was the first in the planned kind of trilogy of Justice League movies, and we see a lot of this stuff with that. There's like, and it's first of three, but it's also, you know, the third in what would have been 5 movies, because Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, this, and then 2 more Justice League movies. And we see like what the plans that were initially laid for that in this cut that were taken out in the theatrical. It's kind of a bummer because I was like, oh, we're never going to get to see, you know, Justice League 2 or 3, which would have been cool. But, you know, I'm glad we at least got to get this one. Got to see some Darkseid, who was not at all in the theatrical. So it was cool to see some of those elements. I don't know. What did you think of all the stuff that was in this as a DC fan? Stuff like Darkseid, stuff like when Superman comes back, he's wearing the black suit. You know, that was something that was new to this. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think all that was really well done. You know, we talked about before where it was the mythology of it all, the battle between all the old gods and Darkseid and his forces. It did feel a little bit to me like Man of Steel, where they're just trying to terraform the Earth again. You know, where I was like, okay, this feels like a rehash of like what he did a couple movies ago. But all the different characters that they brought in. I'm trying to think of what her name is. It's not Mother Righteous, but
Oh,
it's kind of those.
yeah, I was gonna say Mother Gothel, but that's Tangled. But yes, it's Granny
Yeah.
Goodness.
Granny Goodness, Granny Goodness. Yeah, like that stuff was cool. The Green Lantern part of it was really freaking
Mm.
cool. Green Lantern, my favorite DC character. And, you know, like you could see the plans that they were setting up for how they were going to incorporate all these like big characters or like the wider DC universe, which was awesome. And that I like to your point. Yeah, they kind of all stare up at the big bad. And it's, again, that was a moment where I was like, cheesy. I like my initial thought was like cheesy, but at the same time, I was like, oh, well, at least now they have a personal connection to the bad guy, right? You know, like there was that moment where somebody had to fight Thanos so they could relay it back to everybody else that like Thanos is a badass and he's coming and this is what he wants and we have to stop him. And them all looking up at Darkseid in that portal, you're like, okay, now they have a connection. Like that is the guy we have to watch out for. That's the true guy who has the power. And I think that was like really well done. Now, if it ended there where Bruce, you know, gets the Hall of Justice and Superman gets his mom's house back on the farm, I would have been really happy. But then it gets even more confusing with that end credit scene or post credit scene. Oh my God. I was like, I kind of forgot about it, and then as we were rewatching, I was like, what was he thinking here? Like, what is this? You know, like,
Yeah.
what did you think about that?
I will say, yeah, like the movie ends on a pretty because it's split into parts or whatever. So like the last part 5 or 6, whatever it is, it ends on a pretty solid note, I think. And then it's like, okay, I'm like, oh, I kind of like look, I'm like, there's still like 20 minutes left in this. Is that all credits? Like, what's it? And it's like epilogue. I'm like, okay, cool. And then epilogue starts pretty well. It's like you get to hear the like last message from Cyborg's dad, who is, you know, played by just incredible character actor Joe Morton, who I will always love to see. He always is playing like a scientist, you know, and he's one of the first times I saw him was on Smallville, speaking of DC stuff. But you
Oh,
get
okay.
that message from him. He kind of, it's a nice little capper. And then you get like 2 more epilogues that I'm like, it's like the one with that's at the boat, and you're like, oh, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
cool. Like,
that's cool. Yeah,
did you get Luther breaks like gets out of prison, and that scene doesn't really make sense, but whatever. It's okay. Okay, now we can see he's on the boat. All right, so there's something going on. Lex Luthor, Joe
yeah,
Manganiello. That's really good casting as Deathstroke. all right,
Yes.
okay, whatever. And then it's like, here's another scene, and it's like the nightmare scene, and it's like bringing back that Batman v Superman. And I guess part of that was one that was 100% reshot for this. But that was, and part of it was because he's like, hey, we have a Joker, we have a Batman. They have never existed in this universe together. Let's get them together. And I was like, fuck, I hate Jared Leto. So I hated that scene.
He's a terrible Joker, and
Yeah.
I guess my thought process for it is the first time I saw it was like, he knows he's not getting another movie after this. So
Mhm.
what was that for other than just to like tease us for something we're never gonna get? And it doesn't end in any type of way that gives us any answers for this collapsing universe. It just like makes me mad. And like I don't know why you include that other than you just want to mash these toys together at the end.
Right. It did feel like he's like, okay, well, I brought this up in Batman v Superman. I need to kind of like at least attempt to like circle that square, you know? So I
Oh,
was like, okay,
okay.
you know, it didn't really work for me, but I like that. And I am a sucker for whenever it's just like, fucking humanity is wiped out, you know, like, this is who we've got left, you know? That's like a trope that I like. It's just like, whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
random dude, it's like, you've got Deathstroke, you've got Joker, you've got Batman, you've got Mira. Like, it's just like whoever the fuck was left after the apocalypse happened. I think that's always a fun trope. I was like, I would actually just like, I think I would have rather have seen just a whole movie of just like the
Right.
random like D Squad there than whatever that
Right.
scene was.
But then for me, then it becomes, and you're right. There is a part of that trope I do like. But the team that is assembled, I don't like. It's like you're telling me no Green Lantern survived, no other superhuman, like Supergirl in this universe didn't make it.
Mhm.
Like I don't know. I just felt like there's not a Robin that pops up eventually, you know.
Mhm.
So I was just like, this totally felt like a hodgepodge of characters that never got an ending, and he was just like, let's put them in there.
Yeah.
So that it just really didn't work for me, and especially as the last thing we see, it was just like,
Mhm.
I don't know,
Well, there's one more,
yeah.
there's even one more epilogue scene after that too,
Is
where
there?
you get to see,
What is
yeah,
that? I
it's
forgot.
the Martian Manhunter shows up, and it's
Oh,
because it's the character who we've seen him since Man of Steel,
mhm.
and he shows up, and because it's interesting because that scene was originally, when it was shot, it was supposed to be Green Lantern, since you brought him up.
Right,
But
right,
DC was
yeah,
like, no, you can't use Green Lantern. He was like, well, I also wanted this guy to be Martian Manhunter, so I'll have it be Martian Manhunter. So I think they reshot his half of the scenes. I think Affleck's were original.
mhm,
And so it is just one of those things where it's like, it is too many endings, and none of them tie together with anything that's been going on.
right, and that's the whole thing when it comes to this Snyder Cut. Was like, I think you really had a chance to, like, wrap this up nicely, and instead, you dangled a bunch of hooks that we're never gonna get the ending to, and all of it feels a little, like, unsatisfying to me, you know,
Mhm.
and not everything gets a perfectly satisfying ending, and there's sometimes I like that in movies, but I feel like if you're gonna get an extra $70 million and reshoot and do all these things, like, you really have a chance to, like, tie this up in a nice bow, and I don't feel like we got that, you know, and it's just a really confusing strategy, I think, when I step back from the movie even and I look at Warner Brothers and I look at like what DC has done on screen over the last, you know, almost 40 years, you know, it's all like a hodgepodge of hits and misses. And it's really like, and it's not like small misses. There's like massive misses and there's
Mhm.
massive wins. And it's just so crazy to me because of how rich the stories are in comics and how many lessons have already been learned in the comics, you know? And so
Mhm.
I think it's really tricky having somebody like a Zack Snyder take over a whole universe, which I think maybe even the DCU might be running into as well, where it's these filmmakers who are filmmakers. They have a style, they have a vision, they have like a thing they want to put on screen. But when you're talking about a whole cinematic universe, you have to look at the whole picture and how each individual story will feed into this bigger thing. And I think it's tricky sometimes as like if you're precious about your your vision and your story, you know? Like, I don't know. I think in some ways it's a benefit to Kevin Feige, who's not a filmmaker, who's been to film school though, and who's just a fan of overarching classic stories. And just, I don't know. I think there's like a benefit there. Even he's being stretched too thin, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally get you, and I like your point about DC having high highs and low lows, because they oscillate a lot between that. You know, this after Snyder is he's not exactly the Kevin Feige, but he is kind of like the main. He's almost like the Jon Favreau was early on in the MCU
Yeah.
of these movies, where he's kind of
Well said.
making the core of it, or I guess he's a lot like Joss Whedon was there in the middle, which is probably why it makes sense they brought Whedon on. Makes sense on paper why they brought Whedon on to kind of
On
finish this
paper,
movie. Yeah,
yeah.
because Snyder makes this Man of Steel gets a lukewarm but mixed reaction, and then you have Batman v Superman, which I will defend there's the running joke of like next week we're covering Batman v Superman on the show. I think that the Ultimate Edition actually works pretty well. I think that the theatrical once again is kind of a fucking mess.
Mhm.
That movie was not taken away from Snyder. He did still everything that movie was still directed by him. Even the theatrical one, it was just cut down to the bare bones.
Right.
And I think that they got a lot of negative reactions and people were like, we don't like the tone of this thing. So like, okay,
Yeah.
well, we're gonna go the other direction. And I think they really overcorrect when they bring in Wheaton. They bring in this
Mhm.
quippy, jokey style, trying to emulate their biggest competitors and just cutting things
Yeah.
out, rushing things, and it looks bad. Like it looks awful. Like the
Mhm.
theatrical cut is like oversaturated and looks like garbage. And so it's a real overcorrection, and I think regardless of
Yeah.
what you say, whether you're closer to me and you generally really like this movie, you're closer to Thomas, it didn't quite work for you. I think, and tell me if you agree with this, if I'm wrong, but like I think that this is a massive improvement over the theatrical, which I think is objectively awful. I don't know. What do you think about the difference
Yeah.
between the Snyder cut and the Wheaton cut?
This is maybe, yeah, maybe you're gonna be like, you're crazy, but I don't think it is a massive improvement. Like I think I kind of got most of what I got, and the other things, yes, we've talked about, like, there's definitely areas that are better in this, without a doubt. But to me, I don't want to watch either. And I think that's I think that's the thing. Like I saw this criticism of Zack Snyder somewhere online, and as you were talking about it, you were talking about Batman v Superman, and you were talking about Man of Steel. Like I like Man of Steel, but as I've gone back and tried to rewatch it, and it's like, yeah, and it's just like such a downer. Like it's such a downer movie for a Superman, and it's very hard for me. Like that's not a Superman movie I'll go back to watch. It's just such like a bummer. And somebody brought up, if you like all of Zack Snyder's best renditions, or it's the ultimate cut, it's the director's cut. It's
Mhm.
like in order for it to be a good movie, he always needs to extend it. And there's
Mhm.
something to be said about like, directors who can make a good movie in not just like an hour and a half, but like even 2 hours. It's like I don't know if he's able to concisely deliver, a compelling enough story in that time frame and make it satisfying. And maybe that's just the kind of director he is. And I'm not opposed to 4 hour movies. I think, man, if you're a Scorsese, like I'm sitting down, like I'm going to watch the crap out of that. I don't, if you
Mhm.
said, hey, this is 4 hours, I'm like, all right, let's do it. But
Mhm.
I don't, for me personally, think Zack Snyder is one of those guys. And so it's very hard to justify that length of time for any one of his properties, I guess, where I just don't know if he's palpable for like general audiences in that sense. And I'm thinking about like Rebel Moon too, like
Mhm.
that absolutely bombed. And it just was like, I don't get it. That was completely his vision. I was so excited to watch it. His version of Star Wars. And it just completely didn't work for me either. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I just like not sure he's my cup of tea, even though I love his visual style.
That's fair. That's fair. Because I do agree with you that I think he's someone where he needs a longer runway, right? Which I don't think there's anything wrong with inherently. I think
No,
that
there's not.
it runs afoul of the studio system of being like, we need to have this under 2 hours so that we can get extra showing, so we can get extra money, which is
Right.
a counterintuitive thing. It never works because the movies get shorter and they cut out the vision of the director, and they are inherently in a lot of times worse. So they
Yeah.
don't work out. So they don't end up making that much more money. But I will say, regardless of whether prefer one version or the other, I think it is a really good thing that we get both versions and we can watch them and we can choose.
Definitely.
Because that is one of the things that's why I wanted to end this mini series that I've been doing for like 3 months on this film, because I want to end with a win, right? I want to end with this is something that people were passionate about, its director was passionate about, his fans were passionate about, DC fans were like, people did not like that original. They were like, where's this immaculate version that we've never gotten to see? And I feel like some of the backlash is that you can hope and hope and hope for something, and it's never going to be as good as you want it to be. You imagine the perfect thing, and the reality is never going to match it. But I always like when it's like, okay, this is something that exists that was taken away from this person. We are now giving you the chance to see this other realized version. And most of the time, I think that works out. I would say that a big part of this movement of release the Snyder Cut comes from the Donner cut of Superman 2, which for me, I'm a big fan of the Donner cut of Superman 2. It's one of my favorite superhero movies. It's probably
I've
one of my
never seen
favorite.
it.
Oh, you should definitely watch it. Have you seen the first Donner Superman movie?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I love
Okay.
that movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a very similar thing that happens with Richard Donner is he shoots Superman 1 and 2 back to back. He's shooting Superman 2, and they basically take the film away from him and let Richard Lester finish it. And for decades, people were like, wow, we want to see #release. This is before even Twitter, so it wasn't a hashtag, but people were like, that's where the release the blank cut came from, was release the
Yeah.
Donner cut. People wanted to see Richard.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
Donner's vision. And I
Wow.
think it vastly improves. And it is still a little bit cobbled together because he didn't actually finish filming the movie. He didn't make the ending that he wanted. But using, in 2006, they were like, we can actually have the tools now to reconstruct this. We can put Marlon Brando back in because he was cut out of the theatrical cut. There are so many things that they go back in and fix. And that's something we've seen a few times, interestingly, where there is a film that is taken away from a director, and then eventually we do get to see their version. It's interesting because there's another example I'll give is one that I think is the not negative example, but it's an interesting piece for this, which is the Exorcist prequel, which is there is the original director for the prequel for The Exorcist, which is called Dominion, and then the subtitle prequel to The Exorcist was a Paul Schrader film. The studio was like, hey, this is bad. We don't like this. We're going to hire Rennie Harlan to come in and redo a lot of the movie, to recut it, to finish it. That movie comes out. It fucking sucks. I would say people don't like it. I'll just say that. I haven't seen either cut of the Exorcist prequel or so. So it comes out as like The Exorcist, the beginning comes out. People don't like it. A year later, they're like, okay, well, you know what? Paul Schrader, you're an artist. We took this film away from you. We're gonna give it back to you. We're gonna let you make the movie. People also don't like that cut, so that's fun. It's interesting because it's like both versions are not well liked,
Right.
But it's always
It's a gamble.
Yeah, you can always. But it's always. I think it's important that we got to see, because Like, if
Right.
we hadn't gotten like the Paul Schrader version, how long? Just a year later, how long would people be like, we got to see the Schrader cut? We got to see what that
Yeah,
version
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm always a fan of getting to see behind the curtain, getting to see the artist's original
Definitely.
vision. Whether it works out or it doesn't, I'm glad it exists.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's one of the ways the movie industry actually it it can be soulless, it can be money grubby, but like this element, like allowing a director to finish their vision, to really make it like the way they wanted, I think is kind of special. In no other industry would you give someone millions of dollars and say, I don't like what you're doing, take it away, finish it, and then be like, you know what, actually, we're going to go back and give you millions of dollars to do this again. That doesn't really happen in any other industry. And so you're right. Anytime it happens, like I'm a fan of it because you hire somebody because they have an artistic take on this story and these characters and this property. And I think I'm all for like true art, allowing somebody to express it. Whether we all like it or not, like whether I like this or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that, that this was meant for somebody and that they were able to put their whole heart and soul into this and give that to the world. And the world, no matter what art form it is, the world will receive it however they receive it. It doesn't matter if it's a painting, doesn't matter if it's a song, doesn't matter if it's artistic display. The world's going to receive it however it is. So let the person make it the way that they wanted to make it. And he's, granted, he's had some misses lately. He's a talented enough director. He's had some massive wins. Like, no one will ever take 300 away from him. No one will ever take The Watchmen away from him. Like, he made those things. And so, yeah, I think that this is a beautiful opportunity. I just kind of muddies the water, I think, for WB and DC even more. We're going to have to see how this whole thing plays out with James Gunn. And you want to talk about a cut? Show me the Gillespie cut. I want to see the Supergirl Gillespie cut because, that movie wasn't as bad as people were shitting it online.
Mhm.
You perfectly described it in our out of theater reaction of like a Saturday laundry folding movie that you can just enjoy. And I agree. But like, what did the director have in mind that we didn't get to see? Like, I want to see that. So, hey, you know what, DC? If you're out there throwing millions of dollars around, let the man cook.
Right, yeah, no, and there's a few superhero films like that. The one I think of always is Edgar Wright's Ant-Man. Like, what would that have been?
Right.
That would be
That one is
that's
always
high
interesting.
on my list. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that'll never happen because it's Marvel and they don't really do alternate deleted scenes or anything like that.
Right.
And because they kind of have to stick to the canon. But I would have loved to have seen what that would have been. I'm a very big fan of Edgar Wright, typically.
Hmm.
Not that
Yeah.
the Peyton Reed ending is fine, but I'm like, what would it have been? But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, any last thoughts about either cut of Justice League?
Yeah, no, I just yeah, I like the casting for the most part, and it's like it is just a shame that we're not gonna see what this could have been. I just like I hope that Warner Brothers doesn't do it again. Like I
Yeah,
hope after this year, we'll see after Man of Tomorrow. I hope they at least let James Gunn really just play out his vision and end in some way that is a complete story that like kind of wraps everything up nicely. I just don't want this to happen again for DC. Is how I
yeah,
feel about it.
yeah. Yeah, and the last thing I'll say too is, we talked a lot about the acting in this and how we're a fan of most of it, and we briefly mentioned Henry Cavill, but I think he definitely deserves a shout out. I think this is his best portrayal as Superman, where he's not in it a ton, but he is as just kind of being this like lost person. He's
Hmm.
trying to figure his way out. He doesn't really realize who he is, but then when he sees Lois Lane, that's such a good moment. His relationship with his mom, I think he's very good. He's a very stoic character in this. He's
Hmm.
different than Corn Sweat, who's really good. He's more in line, I feel, with like Chris Reeves almost, where minus like the goofy Clark Kent stuff. I think he's phenomenal in this and definitely deserves to be shouted out.
Yeah.
I loved seeing this, and he's having a good time, I think, and it really shows.
That's so true. Yeah. I feel like Cavill, it's so weird because he is a movie star and he's like a A-lister, but like I still feel like so underrated. And I feel like his whole stint in DC or in the DCEU, it just never panned out. And then so I just felt so bad for him for a long time. The Witcher was kind of doing good on Netflix, and it was kind of like middling. Like he just seems like he's so talented, seems like a nice guy, but it just never quite hit the level that I think he could have got to. Like he's just not a part of like the biggest success in the world. And I just like wonder in an alternate timeline what that guy's career looks like.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I think? I think he needs to be the next James Bond. I would fucking love that. I think he would be so goddamn good at that.
Yeah, I don't understand why that isn't like a confirmed thing, but it seems like they're going younger. But you know what? Who am I to say? Like the guy probably has more money than I'll ever have in like 10 lifetimes, and a beautiful wife and kids and all that stuff now. So I'm sure he's fine. But like,
Well, you might not have
yeah.
the money, but you have a beautiful wife and kids. So
No, I did. No, definitely. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I felt bad for him when all
Yeah.
of this was happening, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
probably shouldn't. But either way,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, no, because
yeah,
he did get screwed,
he's a
especially like the
talented
whole
guy.
day. Like he was like, "Okay, I'm done," and then they convinced him to come back for fucking Black Adam, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this will be great," and they're like, "Actually, no, that
Right.
was nothing. Don't worry about it.
Like, you're
DC's
fired
dead."
again. Like,
Yeah,
what?
it's
My
it's it's
God.
insane. So yeah, I feel for him, and I think a lot of the cast. I'm really glad for them. We mentioned how great Ray Fisher was really glad, but the cast really were a lot of the ones championing. We want to see this because this is some work we're proud of. The ultimate product, is not something we're necessarily proud of. We want to see it's not just Wheaton, but it's or not just Snyder, but it's everyone involved was like there
Right.
is this stuff was cut out that we really care about, really worked hard on, and to see
Yeah.
these artists getting their chance to. We might necessarily have a right to see everything that's put out, but I think artists have a right to have people see if they choose to the stuff they put out. So I'm glad they
Right.
got that opportunity.
Yep. Well said.
Thank you.
Completely agree.
Thank you. My last question here is one that I've asked everybody here on this mini series, and that is, because we talked about all of these films that have been lost to time, or that the director's cut there is gone, or is unavailable to stream anywhere, or the streaming service it was on doesn't exist anymore. So all these films that you just for whatever reason can't watch. Is
Mhm.
there a movie out there that is your movie that you're like, man, I wish I would be able to watch this movie that exists for you? What's your like? Is it Batgirl, or is there a movie that we might not ever get to see that you want to see?
Yeah. This sounds crazy. Like, especially during the Snyder Cut whole thing. I want to see the air cut of Suicide Squad. Like
Interesting.
I liked I liked what he did in Fury. I thought that was a fantastic movie. Like those guys just sitting in a tank, and he made that interesting. And I'm also weirdly I did not even hate his version of Suicide Squad. James
Mhm.
Gunn's version was way better, but like I trusted him as a filmmaker as well, and I would have liked to see how his version was different because it almost felt like they marvelized his Suicide Squad as
Yeah, they
well,
try to make it Guardians of the Galaxy for sure.
Yeah, and this was never gonna be that. Literally, they're exposable like
Hmm.
ponds,
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think that would be my answer. There's probably some other movies that'll come to me after we log off, but I think that might be it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'll say this miniseries I timed it out where it's going to be ending right as we're getting Coyote v Acme, which is another win. I'm very glad
Yes,
that movie. We might not be getting Batgirl, but we did get this movie that people were cheering for, championing for. We're going to get to see it, and apparently, from what I've heard, it's very good. So getting glad
awesome.
to see that, and because we've talked a lot about these cuts of films that were taken away from directors and stuff. I wanted to say one for me that I would love to see that we'll never get to see is the original version of The Magnificent Ambersons, which is, of course, the film from Orson Welles. His follow up to Citizen Kane, which is still the version we got is still regarded as a masterpiece of a movie,
Yeah.
but his ending was thrown out because apparently it was too depressing. His assistant director shot an entirely different ending that he was not involved with at all, and the original footage that from the original ending, which was apparently like made it one of the greatest movies ever made, like on par with his Citizen Kane, was thrown out. It was destroyed, and we will never get to see that Magnificent Ambersons, which is, a bummer. So that's why I'm all the more glad when we do get to see things like Coyote v. Acme, like the Snyder Cut, like all of these films that I've talked about over the past couple weeks that have in large part gone away, but that we can still find a way to bring back in some form.
Yep. Dang, well said. Man, I would have watched that. I didn't even know that it existed until now. And I'm like, wait, we can't watch that? This is amazing.
But yeah, man, this was super fun. Thank you for coming on and wrapping up this series with me and bringing your wealth of superhero and film knowledge. What did you want to shout out for the people one last time here?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, you really pushed me to watch a bunch of different things. Actually, most of everything I would have probably watched, or I like watching anyway, but still, I love hearing your take on it. So it's always a blast chatting with you. And yeah, if you guys want to hear more, about mental health or overcoming adversity or resiliency, with a dash of some pop culture and some movie and television references in there, consider checking out Sick Burn Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good time. Really uplifting stuff. I always love seeing it come up on my feed or listening to the podcast. So definitely check that out, guys. And then if you want to hear any other stuff from me, you go to underratedmoviepodcast.com. That's got links to all the other podcasts that I do, Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones and Midnight Film Society, as well as my Patreon, where I'm going to be wrapping up soon my exclusive Patreon podcast, On Minute Deus, which you can listen to for as little as $3 a month. Or you can give, if you want to, for free, do something for us, rate us 5 stars on whatever pod chaser you're listening to. Just want to let you know, so the series is over, but there's still some good stuff that I have planned. We are getting very close to 200 episodes. I'm very excited about that. Wow. Next episode is going to be Princess Mononoke, but specifically looking at it from the vein of how does it compare to Zelda, Breath of the Wild specifically, but Zelda in general. So I had a lot of fun with that one. That episode's already recorded and edited, so check that out in 2 weeks. After that, it is going to be a live show that I'm going to record from a museum. Then for Halloween, I'm going to do an episode with my girlfriend. I'm excited to record it. And then all building up to episode 200, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. That's going to be our 200th episode of Underrated. So.
Yes. I love that. That is awesome. Great movie choice. God, that movie's so good.
I am so excited for it. So I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited for you guys out there to listen to it because I always have fun with this, especially when I get to record with these amazing people like yourself, Thomas. So thank you, everyone, one more time for listening, and thank you, Thomas, for being here. I'll see you guys all next time.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.